Here you see the pick of us. You may be heartily sick of us, still with sense we're all imbued. Although we sometimes flaunt our family conventions, our good intentions mustn't be misconstrued. The stately homes of England, though rather in the lurch, provide a lot of chances for psychical research. There's the ghost of a crazy younger son who murdered in 1351 an extremely rowdy nun who resented it, and people who come to call meet her in the hall. The baby in the guest wing who crouches by the grate was walled up in the west wing in 1428. If anyone spots the Queen of Scots in a hand-embroidered shroud, we're proud of the stately homes of England.
We were walking up towards the house, and we said the house, from a distance, straight away, had a cheerful feel. It has a colour and a lightness about it that you don't see always in English stately homes. This house does feel, to me, it feels welcoming.
Yes, that was the word I was going to use. Welcoming is what is the feeling I had about it here.
It's a party house, I think. Like that's the sort of how it's been talked about before. Like that this is a house. There's a country retreat, there's a place to entertain, and that's why the hall is so grand and the mural is so fantastic, really, that guests would come and, like, as we're doing now.
But they probably didn't come as a gay group, as we're doing now.
Yeah, they might have done.
It was seeing how joyful and welcoming the house was as we approached it and as we entered it. And then to be slapped with all that political statement that had been painted on the walls at the same time. That was kind of unexpected, because it's very party and joyous from the outside. But a bit of slap in the face of the current establishment at that time.
But we like a bit of that, don't we?
Apparently they did too.
Yeah. So has anyone fallen in love with a Greek god? Would you like to share with the group?
Yeah, very briefly. I can remember being 16 and the head boy of my school, Wembley County, was a guy called Alan, and he was very, very lovely, and I was besotted with him. We're talking the 1960s, before decriminalisation. There was no way I would identify as homosexual. But I was in love with this friend of mine, crazily. And I said to him I loved him. But that I kind of maybe connects with the paintings, because at the time of the Greek gods, they weren't gay in the way we are now. It's not a word that they would have used.
What happened to the guy when you told him he loved you? You loved him?
He smiled. He wasn't unhappy about that. But nothing happened. Nothing physical ever happened. I can remember sitting in the backseat of a car with him, hoping that there would be sharp bends in the road and we'd slide together.
I was looking for a character that had a bit of both to express within them. I think it can be quite hard as a woman to relate to some of these if you're not a feminine, nubile young thing. No, they don't quite cut it for me. I want someone who is a woman first and foremost, because all of those are guys that take on female characteristics, and that's fine for them. But I want someone who's a woman first and foremost, and is hairy or big or whatever, but has maternal properties as well. When I go out for a drink with my partner, she'll order an ale, and she's very slim and petite and beautiful, and I'll order a margarita or whatever, and the waiters always put them the other way around because they assume that I want the pint of ale and that she wants the margarita. So
I don't really have 3 words, I don't think, but I did just want to sort of say that as children, we had a family membership to the National Trust, and I've always found these buildings to be kind of like fantasy spaces, because my only real engagement with them is as small children, and they would be places that just giant playgrounds really, where you would imagine these fantasy lives, and I always sort of grew quite disenchanted with that, because I think that they have always been very institutional and very rooted in these very normative stories, particularly about sort of rich people and living, getting married and continuing the dynasty in their lines. And I think even just today to encounter these stories in these spaces, and to have even just written on tables things like being the first openly gay politician and so is such a departure from my understanding of what the National Trust is. And I think I would have clung to those moments as a child, but discovering those histories in these spaces as a kind of way of feeling like a sense of belonging to a history that, because I think British
Which you
history,
need more as a child.
yeah, I think so, because British history is really well documented, or some of it, or certain parts of it, and there's always, and I think we're doing a lot more about documenting LGBT histories as well, but I never felt like there's a sense of the two things coming together.
There are some stories that you can find that are present, but often those stories are related to like the upper classes. Yeah. So you'll only find stories of the working class people in sort of court trials of sodomy or those kind of things. So it's very difficult for historians to find out things really in this way.
All they need to do is to put our stories into their histories, because so often we get written out of history, like Alan Turing, and it's just about putting us back in.
It's just to make anything that relates to us a natural part of the guide or of the chat that the people in the rooms give. So it just is assumed as just part of life.
Like it feels like about our stories being represented here. For me, when I came to this house, I couldn't necessarily see like a gay story that I could connect with. But as you scrape the surfaces and you find out little bits of information, you see that obviously that it's there because we have been there forever.
Up until, for example, the reign of Charles I, there was no difficulty in people appreciating beauty, especially in art and sculpture, and this continues later on with Charles II. But as soon as you get what we call the Puritan period, there's this suppression of feeling and all the damage that is done, and in many respects that's associated with this country being predominantly Protestant, so there's even a kind of Christian kind of mix in it.
And the Victorians did a lot, I think, to just
suppress.
But the Trust could use that the other way around, could you not? And say, well, this is a Victorian house, and you can see how they have suppressed things and educate people that way.
As you come in on either side of the fireplace, there's two sculptures of black slaves, and people don't see it. They don't see the potential of what that means that those sculptures are there.
Because I think everyone has the Downton Abbey kind of view of places like, well, not this because it looks so pretty, but of old manor houses and country houses, and yet the class distinctions, and I guess in the 18th century, early 18th century, must have been the slavery as well, that probably funded a lot of this.
Yeah.
But just being here and being involved in it and being a part of it and learning some of the history, of this country is very interesting, especially when you talk about people that are suppressed and has been suppressed for so many years.
Privilege, assumptions, and muscles.
I was going to say cucumber sandwich. Because I don't think I've ever had one before.
I obviously knew you were coming. That's what I ordered.
I find it all very interesting, really. When I come in.
My three words are beauty, interpretation and understanding. And the reason for that is because if I had just come in on my own and looked at that, I thought, wow, that's beautiful. But I wouldn't have known anything more about it without the interpretation that you gave, which gave me understanding. And I saw it in a different way.
Thank you.